Let's be real. Have you ever felt like an outsider? Like you just don't quite fit in with the world around you? Well, imagine getting a letter written 2,000 years ago, specifically for people who felt that exact same way. Today, we're diving into the first letter of Peter, a message of radical hope for people living as exiles. The letter kicks off with these exact words, and it immediately makes you ask, right? Who are these pilgrims of the dispersion? This isn't just some dusty old history lesson. Figuring out who they were and what they were up against is the key to unlocking the whole message. They were a people scattered, far from home, a feeling that I think a lot of us can still understand today.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll get to know the exiles this letter was for. Then, we'll explore this idea of a living hope it talks about. After that, we'll see how that hope forges a whole new identity, shapes how they live, and finally, wraps up with instructions for the whole community.
Okay, so first things first. Who was this letter actually written to? To really feel its impact, we've got to get in their shoes. These weren't just random people. They were a real community, facing some very real, very tough challenges. So picture this. You're part of this group of early Christians, and you're scattered all across what is now modern-day Turkey. You're a tiny minority. You feel like a foreigner in your own town. The letter calls them sojourners and pilgrims. You're dealing with all this social pressure, these various trials. Suddenly, this letter isn't just abstract theology, right? It's an urgent, practical lifeline for a community that's really feeling the heat. So, when you're facing all that, what's the solution? The letter doesn't promise some easy escape. Nope. Instead, it offers something much deeper, a total shift in perspective, all rooted in this incredibly powerful, defiant kind of hope. And this is absolutely crucial. Before Peter gives them a single command or a piece of advice, he anchors them in this, a living hope. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's presented as a solid reality, something real and tangible that's secured by the resurrection itself. It completely changes the game for how they see their own suffering. Now, this is where it gets brilliant. Peter totally reframes their entire value system. He puts temporary things, like silver and gold, side by side with these permanent, incorruptible realities. He's saying your real inheritance is in heaven, and your faith, the very thing that's being tested by fire, is way, way more precious than gold that perishes. It's a complete flip of what the world tells us truly matters. Okay, so if this living hope is the foundation, what gets built on top of it? A brand new identity. This is where the author takes them from being these scattered, marginalized outcasts and transforms them into a unified people of God. He uses this incredible metaphor of living stones. Think about that. The world might look at them and see rejects, useless rocks to be tossed aside. But Peter says, no, God sees you as chosen, as precious. And you're not just a pile of stones, you're being built together, intentionally, into a spiritual house, with Christ as the main cornerstone. What a powerful image of finding unity and purpose when you feel all alone. And the new identity just keeps getting bigger. I mean, listen to the titles he gives them. These people who felt like nobodies are now called a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Their status is completely flipped on its head. They've gone from being on the margins to being absolutely central to God's story, called out of darkness and into this marvelous light. So with a new identity this big, it naturally comes with a new way of living. This quote is a direct call to action. Their lives, their conduct, are now meant to reflect the character of the God who gave them this new status. It's not about earning it. It's about living up to the incredible identity they've already been given. And that brings us to the really practical, boots-on-the-ground stuff. How is this holy nation supposed to live among their skeptical neighbors? Well, the letter lays out a whole strategy, not just a list of rules, but a game plan for being a positive force in a world that's hostile to them. The whole framework is about respectful engagement, submit to authority, honor everyone, even the king. But, and this is key, this isn't about being a doormat. It says they're supposed to live as free people, as servants of God. And the goal? To silence ignorant talk through their good actions. It's a strategy of living so honorably that it becomes its own form of witness. And this is probably the most counterintuitive part of the whole strategy. The letter actually says that suffering for doing the right thing is a good thing, something commendable. Why? Because it's an imitation of Christ, who also suffered unjustly. Patiently enduring hardship that you don't deserve is held up as this powerful testimony. It's a core ethic for these exiles. Okay, for the final stretch, the letter zooms in on the internal life of the community. It gives specific advice on leadership, it hammers home the idea of humility, and it ends with a really stark warning and an ultimate promise of victory. The instructions are pretty clear. Leaders are meant to be shepherds, humble examples, not power-hungry bosses. There's this call for everyone to submit to one another and be clothed with humility. And right in the middle of all their anxieties, they get this amazing reminder: cast all your cares on God, because He actually cares for you. This is the stuff that's meant to hold the community together when things get tough. But Peter doesn't sugarcoat things, not at all. He gives them this vivid and honestly terrifying image. He's saying, wake up, you're in a spiritual battle. There's a real adversary out there, like a roaring lion looking for someone to destroy. This warning is meant to snap them to attention, to make them vigilant. And then, right after that moment of high-stakes tension, the letter delivers its ultimate promise. This is the payoff. Their suffering? It isn't random, and it isn't forever. It's just for a while. And on the other side of it, God Himself is going to restore them, strengthen them, and settle them. This one verse reframes everything, turning their tragedy into a temporary process that leads to permanent strength. And that really leaves us with the letter's core challenge, doesn't it? For them and for us today, it asks us to think about a radical idea. That feeling like an outsider, that going through hard times, that doesn't have to be the end of the story. It makes you wonder, could our greatest struggles actually be the very thing that forges a faith that's more precious than gold?